So, hello everybody. I'm here in Vienna. My haircut is Corona type, Corona style, and has changed as I can see on the pictures. I hope you're healthy. So, lifespan. I start with a presentation with theory. Then I will tell you some practical things, and then our questions and answers. Okay. So a question to everybody where you can think about is, what is my personal lifespan?
120 years. 120.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How do you know? You cannot know. So my personal lifespan can be estimated when we have a large number of people or a large number of testing people. Then we can estimate, okay, maybe I will at least be 80 or whatever, but we cannot know. I can fall off my chair and can be dead. What we could do is we could define my lifespan. It's a political question. So let's say nobody can be older than 60 years. Well, that I'm over 60 years. So let's say 70 years. George Orwell, I think, has planned such things in his paper, which politicians could follow. I hope not. But with people, it's ethically not correct. But with stuff, with personal protective equipment, with ropes and so on, we are doing exactly this. Lifespan, the definition. Interesting is that in standards, you do not find a definition for lifespan, but when you just look in the internet, it's the length of time for which a person or animal lives, well, or a thing functions. It's very difficult to define how a person lives or an animal, but how long a thing functions is much easier, but not completely possible. Interesting is that the information any supplier of personal protective equipment has to provide is lifespan of the product or how to assess it. So he has to write something. How long can you use? How long will your tool or your device function? I just grabbed randomly one of the manuals out of internet, and here is written lifespan. The actual lifespan of a device cannot be predicted precisely. Well, this is definitely true. It cannot be predicted precisely, as it is influenced by many factors: environment of use, weather factors, storage conditions, frequency and intensity of use, etc. But it's possible to estimate its maximum lifespan. This is a very bold sentence, which I find in many manuals. Estimate. Well, estimate is a rough word. But here, for textiles or plastics, the maximum lifespan is 12 years starting from the indicated production date. Yeah, with the operational lifespan can be estimated on the frequency of use. Let's look at this. 10 years if used occasionally. It's not defined in this manual what is meant with occasionally, but let's say a couple of times per year. 5 years if used frequently. Same, we don't know what that means. And 1 year if intensively used or used for professional commercial purposes. Professional purposes, no matter how many times per year. So what you can see is the lifespan is not very precisely defined. Only the 10 years or the 12 years depends on the producer. Some say 5 years or whatever of total lifespan. And what should we do then? Warning: destroy discarded products to avoid any further use. So recently I heard from a provider for safety equipment for a windmill that they destroyed 62 kilometers of unused originally packed ropes. Unused ropes were destroyed because they were older than 10 years. What does research say? As some of you know, I did a research about lifespan, and I scanned old researches, and they all say, when they're independent, textiles lose their function over the years only if used or destroyed in another way. So we have two different views on lifespan. One is 10 years or 12 years, depends on the producer after production. And the research says that's wrong. My personal view is, let us eliminate the lifespan defined by years from the manuals, because research says there is no such lifespan. So lifespan unlimited would be a cool motto for that. So that was the theory, and I hope that people can see me now. Präsentation beenden. Swoop. Am I visible now on full screen, Oliver? Yes, okay, thank you, Thomas. Okay, now let's go to some practical things. That was a theory. I brought some things. This is a rubber band. It's not PP, which is good, because maybe you realize that over the years, what I can do now, I can stretch it without breaking, but in a couple of years, you will not be able to do that. So this material degrades, it loses its strength, and it loses its function, because I cannot attach it to the glass anymore. On the other hand, we have these things. Do you know these things? I'm pretty sure you use them all the time. And what's the lifespan of this? Maximum lifespan of this? Anybody knows?
Forever.
Forever. How do you know that?
I don't.
So you guess. But the good news is you're right. The interesting thing is that this thing cannot have a lifespan when there is a CE mark. So you have to decide. Either you write CE on this thing here, round sling, then you cannot write a lifespan. Or you don't follow the standard. And what do we have here? A mountaineering sling. It must have a lifespan. There must be defined a lifespan, or how to assess it. Well, most producers define a lifespan, but my research says there is no such thing like a lifespan in years. This here is my personal oldest rope, which I used when I climbed as a teenager. So in the 1970s, I used this. And I don't throw so many things away. So I found it, I could identify it on my pictures, and I tested it, and it is still usable. So it would function. It would catch a fall, and it would, of course, hold static forces. The oldest rope I tested is this. Maybe here is an old climber like me. When I was a kid, my father had such a rope. It's made of polyamide already, so I didn't climb with hemp ropes. So it's an old polyamide rope, and it's over 60 years old. It has been found with two dead climbers who died in the 50s and were trapped in the glacier. and it was found, and the person who found it brought it to me, and we tested it. I had a video on internet about this test. And the interesting thing is, in the knot, it is stronger than this rope, which has been used for 3 months in a climbing gym as a permanent top rope. So 60 years old or more, and this rope have the same strength. So what to do with that news? My personal view is we should eliminate time from the criteria when you have to put it out of function, and find another way to estimate how long we can use these things. From the slack lines, we know that we cannot use it forever. They are exposed to weather, to UV. They are used unless you store them. When you store them properly, then until now, the material they're made of will last, well, forever we don't know, but at least for decades. So now your questions. The sheath gives good UV protection. 600 years, okay.
Walter, I have a question concerning what is written in the standards. So you said either you have to define a lifespan, or you have to define how to assess the piece of equipment. So there's an or, so you can have the second option. So why
yes.
it does not, so manufacturers already have an option to not give a lifespan. Why are they still giving a lifespan?
Ask them. Well, there are some reasons. First, they need to be careful for liability reasons and so on. But these are legal issues which I would question, because we do not have any case. I could not find any documented case that any PPE has failed only because of age. It failed because of acid contamination, so destruction by chemicals. It failed by usage, heavy usage. So one harness, for example, failed because it was heavily used, so that people asked the guy who was Todd Skinner, what, with this gear you're still climbing? Are you crazy? And so we do not have any case that, a documented case, that gear failed only because it was X years old. So I don't know. You must ask the manufacturers. I'm researcher, not political. If time, I think it's polyester at Chris. This is polyester. Yes, you can see it on the blue label. But if this was a question, polyester. So what is your suggestion? The time factor is more being saved by the companies or other MBS. That's what the other factors a manufacturing can share with a client to use the gear in best manner possible, and be able to self-assess the safety if a certain gear. Well, I would say a very good example is a rope. You can use a rope as long as a sheath is intact, as long as you can feel the core is intact, and as long it has not been contaminated by acid, which you cannot see. So this is something the manufacturer can write in his manual. More difficult it is with webbing. Webbing, when it's not, there are webbings out there with a core sheath, construction and webbings where the load-bearing fibers are on the outside, like many slack lines. And there, the load-bearing fiber, every load-bearing fiber is on some point on the outside. So UV can destroy all the load-bearing fibers. Here, UV can only weaken the sheath, but the core is still intact. And in core sheath constructions, the core, when it's made of high-performance fibers, for example, will also hold. So as long as the sheath is intact, it works. So there are two things. First, the construction, and of course, the material. Here is also a very robust sheath which protects load-bearing fibers in the middle. And the rest is, I think, clear. Acid. What about oils? There are big lists in the internet depending on material and chemicals. But let's look on the real accidents. The real accidents have happened only due to strong acids, not to oil or washing things or disinfection things. But chemicals can mix and react in a complete new way. So the best is don't let your stuff get in touch with any chemicals. That's my recommendation. Until now, I couldn't find any other chemicals that are really dangerous than strong acid, sulfur acid, which is in car batteries, and cleaner of pools. Pool cleaner has been cause of an accident. So for long-lasting webbing, this is for me difficult to answer. Webbing, I think you mean for slacklining, webbing for slacklining. I would say the sport is too young and the development is so fast that we only have a rough overview what lasts longer than the other. It has been mentioned by the previous speaker that polyamide degrades quicker than polyester. Am I correct? Yeah. But we are now in ongoing research, like the UV research the ISA is now planning. I cannot answer this question. Does webbing fatigue from loss of cyclic loading like thin metals? This is not a silly question. There is not very much research on fatigue. With ropes, I did fatigue tests, and normal semi-static ropes or climbing ropes do not. I could not identify any fatigue failures. When you attach it with a knot, then it's rubbed through. So when I tie here a knot and pull on one side, then you can see that this part here cuts through the other this bend, and it's not fatigue, it's destruction. And when you watch carefully the knot, then you can see the destruction. So I could not identify fatigue by now. Chlorine. Effect of sea salt, water on rope webbing. There are researches on the ropes where they attach buoys or or ships, and it's always combined with degradation. So when you stretch and unstretch a rope or bend it, then the fibers rub against each other. I wouldn't call that fatigue. It's destroying the fibers to each other, and obviously salt water accelerates this a little bit. It's a similar effect when with what I showed you, this climbing gym rope. When you bend a rope over a carabiner, so a small diameter, back and forth, then the core will be destroyed. Not in a matter that it can fail by now, but it reduces the strength of the rope significantly. Fatigue has been analyzed and tested with energy absorbing for ferratus when weather does fatigue limit webbing drops. Well, I'm not sure if you refer to the accident which happened in ferrata sets. There were ferrata sets made of a combination of polyamide fibers and rubber, and they, when stretched many times, they degrade drastically, and there has been a death accident by such a system. But now they changed the system and the standard. They are forbidden these systems, and I have not heard that about this research of new ferrata systems. So, do you foresee the cyclic mechanism of knots also being present in Zoom loops in webbing? No, I tested. It would be a surprise. I cannot foresee anything, but Zoom loops that are stitched like this in polyamide, you can cycle load them many times, and they do not degrade. So I would be surprised, but it depends, because in a Zoom loop, when it's like this, then maybe when this diameter is too large, then maybe this can repair, but that's, I don't know. That's cannot look in the future. Why do ropes lose so much strength when they're wet? Because depends on which material they are made of. Polyamide, the molecules suck in the water and get weaker. It's a matter of the polyamide material. The good thing is it's reversed when dry again. I think polyester and polypropylene don't lose that much strength, as I know, but polyamide, yes. Lionel asked further up the chat for static products. I can understand that lifespan is set as very conservative, but for dynamic products such as dynamic ropes or dynamic behavior, time even so. Well, I would be very interested on the research, because I did research with semi-static ropes, very old semi-static ropes, and I could not see that the dynamic behavior changed. So I did a standard test for semi-static ropes, which contains two dynamic testings, and I could not identify that they are getting less, that the dynamic behavior gets less. Are you trying any studies on Yes, I am. The material is very, very young, and they are partly changing the materials. And it's not my primary goal. I did some testings, and I use a short dynamer rope, 6 millimeter, for my personal access. But ISA takes so much time from my research time, so that I cannot focus on the new dynamer things. For your information, semi-static ropes are usually more dynamic than most webbings used in slacklining with regards to stretch under the, yes. Yes. One case for sewn loops can have sharp edge from cutting the end and cause long-term slow-acting abrasion. Have you heard about this? No, I only, every rubbing on our material, on soft materials, as well as hard materials, is bad. That we have to know. So ropes can be cut through, webbing can be cut through easily, and on very surprising things. And the harder you stretch, the easier you can cut it through. So they did tests with Edelried, where they tested rope over edges, and there is a much a big difference between a person like me, 60 kilos, or a person with 120 kilos. I don't know how many times faster a rope is cut through, but many times faster. One case for sewn loops can have, yeah, okay, that I answered, I think. Did I answer all questions by now? Oliver? Did I answer everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Most node reduces you lose X. I'm finding it very hard to find similar data.
I think one question, I'm not sure if you answered that one. If time is not a factor, can one consider features of the equipment? That was asked further up. But yeah, I think you talked about how to assess the lifespan of your rope.
I think we have very good criteria for discarding things and inspecting things. And for the question marks in the webbing we use in slacklining, you're really in a very, the research is in very good hands. So I do not know any sports which has a comparable high standard in research on how long things are lasting and how we can use it. By the way, congratulations on this. The knot, I tested knots in two UHMWPE ropes, dynamer ropes, and they have a comparable strength, but they have less strength when shock loaded. That's an interesting thing. When shock loaded, they have much less strength. But the data is too young for this. But I can find the last research and can provide it on to ISA on high performance fibers. So yeah, splicing is not my core competence. I'm knotting things. So was it that? Feel free to ask questions whenever. You know where you can reach and find me. I hope my lifespan lasts a little bit longer than the next weeks and years. I hope it will be decades.
Yeah, we all hope so. Thank you, Walter, for the presentation and for answering all the questions. Next up, on our program is a 30-minute break, and after that, Philip will be giving a talk on the SAIR reporting system. And I would just suggest in the meantime, whoever wants to can stay in this chat room and maybe exchange ideas, and maybe Kat or whoever is doing it, we can just stop the recording and have some loose exchange until we continue with the program. Yeah, thank you again, Walter.
Sorry, Ollie. We will start again in 1 hour. We start at 12:30 according to the program. So there's a 1 hour break.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. See you later.
See you later.
Thanks for that presentation, Walter. It was really interesting.
Thank you very much. Interesting questions. I hope I answered them all properly. Oh, Richard, still in.
He just joined.
So just a little discussion. I think Walter was talking about the effects of sheath on the durability of ropes in the long term. There are core sheath construction webbings, but the sheath in those webbings, according to the manufacturers, takes a lot more load than the sheath in most current mantle ropes. So that's something to consider. You know, if the sheath degrades on those webbings, it's going to reduce the break strength of the webbing a lot more than the sheath degrading on most current mantle ropes. I think Walter said that he did see some pool cleaning products affecting textiles, but I don't think he mentioned chlorine specifically. Walter, if you could address that, that'd be pretty interesting.
I don't know if it was chlorine, but it was an acid, a chemical which contains acid, which is used to clean pools. So chlorine, I don't think that it destroys our materials. And just usage of webbing over or in a pool. I think it's only if you use these chemicals to get rid of the green stuff which grows in a pool. But we only have this one accident where a rope failed, and if you're using that's things that normal climbers don't do so many times, to jump with their gear into pools. So that could be a very typical application of slackliners, where it would be good to get some webbing tested, which has been used in pools, maybe with chemical cleaning. There are so many cleaning tools now where you don't need to put chemicals in it, like salt cleaning and so on. But I don't know any research on that. Oliver, that would be a good thing to do some research on that, if it's normal to slackline over pools.
Speaking from experience, it's very normal, at least much more normal than lead climbing over a pool.
Yeah. Most of the times we're learning from accidents. So we can try to eliminate something by research, but mankind or our planet is designed in a way that we learn from failures and from accidents. So what I strongly appreciate is your accident reporting system, you have really one of the best accident reporting systems in the world from all sports I know. For example, in ropes courses, there is not such a thing. There are so many accidents which happen, which you just know when you know the guy who had this accident or the operator, but they are not reported in any way. And last year, the accident analysis has been shut down, and there is no such thing. So compared with your industry, you're really on a very high top level. So auto hardware, I had significant surface pitting on a set of carabines I used while inspecting several over pool obstacle course. They were dry but not washed. I packed them for the trip home and unpacked 2 days later, and they were gone. Did they look like this? So this is galvanic corrosion. If you use aluminum and put it with some wet gear like webbing and so on in a bag and let it rest for a year, then you can probably end up like this carrot. Is it visible that it's completely destroyed? You can rub away the aluminum. This is from a cave. So don't do that. Always dry the things.
I know that 7000 series aluminum is very susceptible to galvanic corrosion like that, but is 6000 as susceptible? Like 6000 series aluminum? Because that's used in some web locks.
I don't know. I don't know which one. These are normal climbing carabiners, and there are a couple of carabiners I saw in even worse conditions when they were in caves and in combination with stainless hangers and all the time wet, then they're eaten up completely.
Well, most climbing carabiners are at that 7000 series, but I'm just interested in 6000 because there's some web locks made out of that.
Yeah, I would really be careful. Just be careful and dry it up when in combination with stainless steel and some.
Actually, that's really good advice because most of the pins on web locks are made of steel, so it makes it even more susceptible to that if wet.
Yeah, I would write it. This I would write in the manuals more than a lifespan. Always dry your stuff. So,
Walter, I tried to ask before, but my internet kicked me out. You were saying that slacklining has a very good incident accident report system thanks to the ISA, but tell me, why do you think in other sports it's not so good? What is holding them back?
difficult question, but it's one important thing is the culture. And if you have a culture of trust, which means that, for example, ISA is never misusing some information against persons or people they maybe don't like, then you have a higher contribution. In the ropes course business, there were some severe fights going on between responsible people. There, a couple of people started a personal fight, and it trickled down to the whole organizations. one person left, started a competitive association, and they started to make each other bad. So they focused on internal fights. And when somebody told something about an accident or an incident he or she had, then the probability that it was used against this person was very, very high. So keep your culture and avoid in all discussions and on Facebook groups and everywhere, when you hear that somebody says one must be an idiot when he or she makes this failure, then immediately step in and interrupt. This is a no-go, and this will kill your culture. So appreciation, worship, acknowledgement of contributions on this, and never let happen bad words or, yeah. Answer
That's
question?
really good advice. Very good advice. Thank you.
Very important for you. The other part, you have a lot of technicians, obviously, in your people, more than in other sports, and they are interested in research. So, and what is important is that you started in a very early age of your industry with research. So, when chlorine gas is added to water, as well, and the hydrochloride as well, and this was with, because well, it will become more acid. Okay, so seems that it's worth it to make some research with, maybe in one of your gardens there is a big pool, and you use chlorine or even worse things, dump some slack lines in there and wait a little bit. Reporting is always better with recreational activities because there is not a requirement of confidentiality with legal or threatened legal actions. I've been in court cases internationally with challenge ropes accidents, and I'm not allowed to discuss the accidents. Yes, what Richard Delaney, I hope I pronounce you right. This is a real bad side effect of our culture. Money is always much, much more important than lives, human lives, or lives of our kids. So in legal issues, people are not allowed to release the information which would be important to save further lives. I think we should change this, but this is a very bad development of our culture. But we can provide anonymously the information. At least in Austria, this is legal. So I can warn about things that happened, not referring to this case. And this is what I am doing. And I think everybody should do that. Hey, Walter, any interesting examples in the work that doesn't relate ropes or webbing or climbing gear? Not related to ropes or webbing or climbing gear. I will think about and provide it, Naveen. Of course, I'm focused mainly on gear. The second thing is steel wire ropes, cables, and shackles, and all the things which are also using. So degradation of wire ropes because they're discarded way too early in ropes courses, sometimes, and sometimes way too late. Black diamond testing. Yeah. Okay. This is a link. I'm afraid to press a link because I pressed before the wrong button and flew out. Use this chance. Yeah. I'm here. I have nothing to do. Only some testing for ISA.
I have questions. I wish I had more specific, but I just want to hear you speak more. Tell maybe why is it that ropes, that you have become so passionate about ropes specifically, for example, rather than webbing?
That I became so passionate about ropes? Good question. The rope is also a metaphor. I mean, the word Seilschaft, it's not a Bunschlingenschaft, it's a Seilschaft. So am gleichen Strang ziehen. It's not am gleichen webbing ziehen. So
Ollie,
the rope.
Ollie, help! I want to understand everything. Help with the words.
The words. So there are German phrases like if two people work together very strongly, then they work like a climbing team. And in German, it's called Seilschaft. Seil is rope. So a roped team. So if we work, you and we work very well together, then we create a high bondage, and there is a metaphor of the rope and not of the webbing. The rope is much older than the webbing. So I think the rope was invented, the Etrusker at least had the webbing. The Egyptians had had rope, but not webbing, I think. So the webbing is a very, very young thing. But in my research, I took all the polyamide stuff, also the webbing. So I focused on all of the things. I've also 40 years old webbing tested. It's the same like ropes. When not used or abrased, then it's like new. So
hey Walter, this is Fernando.
Hi Fernando.
How you doing? Have you tested any natural fibers?
You were the hemp guy asking before.
Yeah.
I did, I think, one test, but it's too long ago. And no, I did not do testing of natural fibers because I'm so happy that we overcame the hemp stage of climbing. When I was young, there were still people out there climbing with hemp ropes, and they were sometimes breaking under personal load only because they were rotten. What is the purpose of your question?
Most of it, the degradation. How fast is the degradation? And yeah.
Oh, very fast. When they're wet, very fast.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Only a few years and they're gone.
And they're gone. Oh.
We know that from many accidents with ropes. Of course, they used it very long in those times because they didn't have any money. But when they were stored and the humidity was caught in the core, and the core was completely rotten. So
a lot of slackers
always old technology, right?
Pardon me?
Nothing new that is just covered or sealed or.
No,
there hasn't been any development on the natural fibers itself. Not for this.
No.
At the moment that the chemical industry come in with the petroleum and selling plastics, it was put aside.
Yeah, and I think that was a good thing.
Yeah, it was good. Good for that moment.
Yeah.
A lot of slackliners want to know about natural fibers for sustainable webbing. But I think it's a very bad idea considering how much fungus is on slackliners' feet.
I would suggest that we focus on making it lasting longer. I mean, just imagine they produced ropes 40 years ago, according to a standard which is still the same like 40 years ago. And you can still use those ropes when you take care of them. So I'm pretty sure if you focus more on durability, then we can meet the goal lifespan unlimited. For example, you could make a sheath made of natural fibers, which you just can unwrap, throw away, that will go into nature again, and the core will be protected. For example, on harnesses. Harnesses, that would be a good idea to have some sheaths. You rip them off. They're made of natural fibers, and the core is holding forever. I would go for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, using recycled fibers. That would be a good idea. Yeah. So I think one of my first targets is now on the 6th of March in 2023. That's when I'm getting 65 and my official retiring age. I want the lifespan defined by years taken out of the manuals. That's my target. You could all support me there. 21 people here in the chat. Support me in taking out the lifespan in years. It's just wrong. I know, Richard, you have a different opinion.
Richard, what is your goal for when you turn 65?
Just to get to 65?
Feel free to speak, by the way, when all of you ask.
No, I just had to unmute my microphone. I was just trying to find the button. It's the first time I've used this app. My goal for when I'm 65, I don't know, just to have been a good parent and a good partner, and maybe life a bit safer for technicians. That's only 10 years away for me.
So there is, by the way, one supplier of PPE which has no lifespan on all ropes and harnesses and so on. It's unfortunately very unknown. They have a bad marketing. I will look it up and provide it here.
Span set slings wrapped around many times?
No, they are not even producing them by themselves. They let it produce the same manufacturer the ropes like all the other manufacturers, but they just follow my research and just took it out. Well, I try to find it.
It would be a shame if you buy a harness that lasts forever and it's just a little bit uncomfortable because you have no reason to ever get rid of it.
You can pass it over to somebody else.
To your children.
Gift economy. I try to find Tractel. It's called Tractel. I write it in the Tractel is the supplier with no lifespan.
Is that Tractel who make lifting equipment, chain lever hoists and that sort of stuff?
Most probably. I think they. Wait a moment. Wait. I will provide here a link. Tractel. So here I will provide you a link. Kopieren. Chuk. Since 2017, Tractel no longer indicates lifespan on fall arrest equipment. Or PPE can be used without restriction from the manufacturing date, providing that it's used in accordance with the manuals, and you have the history, you have periodic inspection. I think that's a cool thing. So if they can do it, everybody can do it. 3 years to go from now, by the way.
Tom asked if you could say something about the standards, the webbing standard.
The ISO webbing standard?
The different classifications.
Yes, it would be interesting to hear what you think about our 4 classes of webbing, since this kind of contradicts to your general statement about not giving a lifespan for products. So maybe you can just like tell us what your opinion on this is and why you think it's probably still a good or not a good idea to make these different classes for webbing or types.
Yeah, for me, it indicates how long you can, depends for what you need it. So when you're using it every day or in a commercial way, then I would take the strongest possible, because we know that these types last longer than the others, which doesn't mean that you can predict how long it will last. But when you take the 4 types, that's at least the theory, and I think that's quite practical too. When you take the 4 types of webbings and use them all in the same way, then you have to discard them after different times, which are hard to predict because it depends environment and usage and so on. So I think this is helpful for the consumer. It's the same with ropes. You have these lightweight ropes, climbing ropes. When you use them in yo-yoing, so bouldering out and falling, they will be gone within a couple of days. So there I would take multi-fall ropes, which are much more heavier and thicker than the others. And when I go on expedition, where I have to carry everything and fall, normally never. And if I fall 1 time, then it will hold me, and a second time too, and a third time too, but not 150 times on the same spot. So I think that's a similarity to other gear, and I cannot see the contradiction, because you don't predict how long it will last. That would be a mistake.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I understand that.
Our lifespan isn't based on time. Yeah, that's what Philip Gesing writes. Our lifespan isn't based on time, but usage. Yep. Any comments on? So here are. So in other words, we define a maximum amount of days per webbing type. Yeah, that's a thing I can support. Any comments on cyclic loading and where we have blind spots? Oh, I would tell you immediately where you have blind spots in the high lining content. Until now, I cannot see any blind spots. when I compare it to other communities, we have now a case where a bolt in rock climbing failed, probably due to cyclic loading. We don't know yet. I hope that we will find out. But you're very far ahead of other sports in cyclic loading testing and theories. Also, we have a good test to simulate the failure of an anchor in a slack line. Well, let it happen. You did you did tests before with where you tested the loads in a backup, right? We could simulate it if we would knew the curve, like time and load. Then we could try to simulate it in my drop test booth and see if it's similar. How do you think webbing should be? That's a different question. So to have the curve of these tests, or only the maximum load? But that can be done easily. You just take a good load cell, make the loading, let a person fall into or jump into a webbing, and then we have the curve. Then we could simulate this, probably.
I think Philip was referring to having a backup of your anchor and then cutting the anchor. So that maybe I didn't understand you correctly, Philip, but I thought you meant like you cut the anchor and then the web lock flies a little bit and then is caught by the backup tied back to the tree, as opposed to the backup that you fall into on the highline.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was the original question.
What?
Yes, that was my question. So, but I think you answered it anyways. So what I would like to know is if we can simulate a specific amount of energy that has to be caught by any sort of backup or any sort of equipment. That's the question. But if you can change with the weight of the weight in the fall tower, maybe that works.
That would be easy, and I think the acceleration of the web lock is due to the stretch of the webbing, the energy stored in the webbing. So like a slingshot. That could be also simulated. We just preload, then cut it, and then you have the same effect. Ryan Watson, how do you think webbing should be terminated for the backup? Could line lockers, chain links be better than tied backups? I do not know. I think you're all referring to this accident where I know only a little, not enough to have any theory in it. So whenever I know more, then I can have a theory, and then I could simulate it in my lab, probably. Like fast loading different terminations. I don't like speculation. Speculation, is that an English word? What do you think about? That's Navin Devnani Torres. Navin Devnani Torres. Yes, falling into falling any factor in static in a static webbing, I would not recommend it if you love your back or your life. I personally use self-made anchors made of climbing rope. That is good for factor 2, and that's enough for me. Why not use climbing rope? They have also sewn loops of climbing rope. If you don't like knots, or you can put a shrink tube around the knot, then it doesn't get caught anywhere. Yeah, I would not use slings for that. Have you done any tests on shock loads and webbing knots? No. High tie? No, I did not. But I could do it on my tower.
So we are planning to visit Walter soon and do some of these tests, actually.
Yes. About half of my working time is reserved for ISA. The coffee machine is on. Yeah, Richard, that is what came out in I did some tests with high performance fibers with petrol red line, and the strength in knots was significantly lower than in slow pulling tests. Yeah, Thomas, I saw all these reports, but for me, not enough information to have a theory. Oh, okay. That it's exacerbated by the geometry.
I just mean that in webbing, because of the geometry, when there's a shock load and there's a lot of heat to dissipate, it tends to focus on one side of the webbing, the pinching. And then once that goes, webbing very easily breaks once there's any kind of deformation in it.
We have a couple of documented accidents with climbing webbing, which failed under body weight. All have been used used outside for a long time, so they were hung outside for, let's say, 10 years or something, and the geometry of the webbing may be one of the reasons. It's also a big difference how you load it. If you load it in a rapid link, it lasts less than if you load it in 2 parallel pins. And also the diameter is very important, makes a big difference. So it's like if you want to rip paper, you start on one side, and this effect is most probably also with your webbing.
Yeah, we're all curious right now because there was, in the accident, there was a backup tied in webbing, and the backup didn't seem to reduce the force of the impact much.
Yeah.
So what would interest me, Walter, is basically with this accident and in general with our lines, we store lots of energy by tensioning the system, especially when we do it as a long line, so in a park. And this seems to be very difficult to simulate. I mean, we can calculate energies, but we have so much energy stored, and there is a shock load, and the system, the line keeps on pulling, so it's not easily simulatable with a fault tower. Maybe can you say something about this? Is there a chance that we can simulate this with a fault tower by calculating energies, or is this just going to be not good enough in your opinion?
I don't know. We have to try out. I have a couple of options. One is simulate the force in pre-stretching something and then cutting, and then you have this this elastic energy. Richard has an idea. He writes, obviously, explosions for shock load testing. Yeah, I can use it in my office. Do I get a permission using explosives in my office?
Yes.
Cool. Before I move out, I will start this testing.
Oh, I'm still laughing. Good.
I know that they use, these in the amusement parks, there are these slingshot types of things. And this is a pneumatic system with a reverse pulley system. So that to have a reverse pulley system could one idea, but I would try it in the first row to keep it simple. Maybe we can have a combination between the drop tower and falling on a webbing, and this webbing is shock loaded. John Yates can make screamers do pretty much. I'm fairly certain he made them for the parachutes on the back on the space shuttles. Screamers. What does Leo say about screamers?
Just tearaway lanyards. Energy. We call them energy absorbers. They don't absorb energy. They just flatten the curve and lengthen the time over which that force is applied. And they're pretty cheap. Pretty cheap to manufacture as long as the market's identified pretty clearly. If that's the main concern, that I'm pretty sure that that something would work.
I have been on high lines with screamers installed on the backup, but this was a long time ago, and some people were using Dyneema backup.
Yeah, and there's screamers and screamers with that stuff. The little shorty screamers, they have such a short deployment length, and they tear at about 2.2 kilonewtons. The Petzl L57s, for example, they're more like 4 to 4.5 kilonewtons and a 2 meter deployment length. So, there's certainly screamers and screamers with that stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we were using, or they were using screamers in series just to absorb more energy in the case of a potential backup fall, but I don't think it would have actually, I don't know, it was never tested, so it's hard to say if it would have saved your back.
Sorry for that. I thought I can talk on my laptop. But so basically, Siebert, what is like the maximum weight you can put into your fall tower? Because instead of like having a light weight falling quite a high height, just having like a really heavy one, like 500 kilogram or 600 kilogram, and then dropping it from not so high.
Why do you want to do that?
Because then basically, because the problem is like slacklining, if your long line fails and you're getting your backup loaded, then you don't have like just a short shock load, which is then gone afterwards. It's like you have like a really fast increase on load from 0 to like whatever 6-7 kilonewton, and this will stay there for some time. So it's not like just one bounce; it's like just stays there. So you need very fast, like a load increase from 0 to 7 kilonewton, but then hold this constantly until it fails or not.
I will take my car for this and pull it up. I know that when I pull up my car, then I have 800 kilos, for example. And then I could release it, but not to the ground, but into some device. I mean, it's serious.
I don't know how good it is for the car for long-term testing.
Release it into a swimming pool and then wash and dry it before you use it again.
Yeah, when it's frosty, then the water will go out anyway. so I mean, my drop tower is not really designed for that, but I could change it. I need to get the weight. The weight is a little bit difficult to get. 500 kilos. I have to change my drop tower, and there must be a real need for that. If you can have another idea. By the way, I want to move with my laboratory anyway to another space. Maybe I have there other ways to test.
Yeah, I think the other idea which I had is like working along a strong spring, something that is pulling down, which is just keeping a bungee cord or so to simulate like the stretch of slackline in a short distance. But I don't know how realistic this is to get like bungee cord tension to 5 kilonewton or so. You need like a lot of bungee cord, doubling it up a lot. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe we can do the same with ropes, just with ropes. When you take a couple of a rope in three times or 4 times and pre-stretch it, maybe that could work. But you need a permanent load then for a couple of seconds.
Yes, so that's what how reality is.
Why not do it with a hydraulic system?
Can you load it so fast? It needs to be like shock loaded in a certain way that is like really fast, but then it keeps like this tension afterwards. So that's like the specific thing. So I don't know if the hydraulic can be fast enough doing this. That's I think the main issue.
I can put my hydraulic machine on a drop tower and let it drop down the cylinder.
Do it on the same day that you blow up the house. So when the police arrive, they see the full picture.
Good. This is see the full picture, and the picture is nothing anymore. So what's DLV loops? DLV loops. Fernando, what is that? DLV loops will be tested for bungee jumping loads.
Just some loops for the that we use on the webbing. That the guy that produces here, he's using it for. He's going to use it for bungee jumping backups. It's just a loop within another loop, with 6 bar tacks each side.
I think the first approximation will be that we do fall tower tests with webbings and knots in the webbings and try to calculate the energies from that and see where we get with that, and then maybe do some further tests.
Yeah. Okay. I see the loop. Yes, Thomas, we can do that. That's easier than explosives and drops of cars in pools. Charlie Chater shows us his flat. We can't hear you, Charlie.
Yes, apologies. I couldn't work out how to turn the video off. I'm just in the middle of a couple of things. I'm going to be listening. Thanks.
So I think in 5 minutes you have to continue with another thing. Then I would like to say thank you for the good conversation and for the good hints and advices for explosives and so on. And hope to see you again personally. It's a pity that we cannot meet in Switzerland. I was looking forward to be on the Grimsel Pass again. Thomas told me, and I know the Grimsel Pass anyway. just a cool place. So hopefully next year, huh?
Thanks a lot, Walter, for your time. And thanks for all the work you're doing for us as well.
Yeah, well, I'm learning.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.